Hello, this is Mr. Bakri from Toronto International Academy. We are a private school based in Ontario, Canada, with two locations, one in Mississauga and one in Oakville. And today we're going to be talking about Hamlet, a play written by Shakespeare. So, who is William Shakespeare? William Shakespeare was a playwright and poet. He lived in the 1600s. Many people think that he was writing in Old English, but he was actually writing in early modern English. So the play is mostly understandable to a student who is proficient with the English language. There is somewhat of a learning curve, so there is some vocabulary that may be new to students and to modern readers, and expressions that also are new, but you can always find editions of Hamlet that have a modern translation next to the original text. And of course, Shakespeare also wrote many sonnets, which are also available online. In fact, hundreds of them. Now, he's also the author of very famous plays like Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Othello, Hamlet, King Lear, Merchant of Venice, many different plays. And these are plays, these are not novels. So a play is meant to be performed in front of an audience, and they're not just meant to be read. And so, because these are plays, there are soliloquies where actors will actually speak directly to the audience and not just to the characters on the in the play. These plays are very important primary sources for the history of the English language, because we learn about the evolution of the English language, from the 1600s onward. We learn about expressions, we learn about the history of that time. So these are very important tools for us to learn about the language. Furthermore, these plays are very universal. They are on themes like love and revenge and hatred and jealousy. And so these are themes that can be related to by people all over the world. You don't have to be someone from the 1600s in England. You could be somebody living today and still find these plays to be very relatable. Now, of course, William Shakespeare is a product of his era, so we will find some of the beliefs of that time when it comes to superstitions, when it comes to beliefs about women, for example. These will still be prominent in William Shakespeare's plays, so we do have to understand that he was, although the themes and the characters that he was writing about were universal in some respect, these were archetypes, but nonetheless there are aspects of William Shakespeare that reflect the time and place in which these plays were being written. So first I want to start with a summary of Hamlet. Hamlet generally is read in grade 12 in Ontario high schools, and it starts off with the father of Prince Hamlet dying. So the father of Prince Hamlet is King Hamlet, and he dies just before the play starts. And near the beginning of the play, Hamlet's uncle, whose name is Claudius, actually marries Hamlet's mother, who is named Gertrude. And this is something that Hamlet is not very happy with. He comes to the wedding dressed in black because he's still mourning his father's death. His father had only died 2 months prior to this wedding, and it is a little bit strange for your mother to be marrying your uncle. And Hamlet calls this very incestuous, that this is something that's very peculiar and not good. And of course, Hamlet's own mother seems to be very sincerely in love with Hamlet's uncle. Okay, Gertrude really loves Claudius, and this is kind of a betrayal. This is how Hamlet sees it. Of course, Claudius becomes the king, and afterwards there's a ghost that appears to Hamlet. The ghost is actually haunting Denmark, which is where the play takes place, for a while at this point. But then the ghost appears to Hamlet, and Hamlet follows the ghost, and this is actually a ghost of Hamlet's father. This ghost is the ghost of King Hamlet, who had just died. And the ghost informs Hamlet that he didn't just die a regular death, but in fact he was murdered. He was murdered with ear poison, and the one that administered this ear poison was none other than Claudius, the current king. the uncle of Hamlet, the husband of Hamlet's mother. So the ghost tells Hamlet, you need to seek vengeance. You need to kill Claudius because he killed me, and only then will I find rest in purgatory. Now Hamlet, it's obviously very difficult to just go and kill a king, especially if that king is your uncle and the husband of your mother. So Hamlet's idea is that he would like to actually act insane. He doesn't want to uncover his plan to everybody. So he says, well, if I start acting crazy, then maybe people will not pay attention to me. They won't think that I'm actually planning this grievous crime. And so Hamlet decides to appear in ripped clothes, to appear drunk in public, he starts to womanize, and he actually goes to the woman that he loves. His lover's name is Ophelia, and he tells Ophelia all kinds of rude things. And these are things that are, should not be said to anybody, but they're particularly rude to women. Okay, so he says things like, God gave you one face and you paint on another, which is a reference to makeup. He tells Ophelia that women are a bunch of whores and sinners and that they're not loyal. And of course, Hamlet is thinking of his own mother, that very soon after his father died, his own mother, in fact, betrays his father by lustfully and incestuously marrying Claudius. This, of course, breaks Ophelia's heart. Now, Hamlet is not 100% sure that what the ghost said is factual, and so what he does is he would like to design a play in which the play has a king and has someone that poisons the king with ear poison, and he wants this play to be seen by Claudius. And the idea is that when Claudius sees this play, and by surprise sees exactly what the method in which he killed King Hamlet, that he would get shocked and surprised. And so really Hamlet wanted to verify the fact that Claudius killed his father by seeing Claudius's reaction to that play. And so of course he designs the play. Claudius sees this actor poisoning the king in the play, and so Claudius all of a sudden gets very nervous. He stands up, and it becomes clear that Claudius is in fact guilty, and he's afraid that maybe Prince Hamlet actually knows what the real story is. Prince Hamlet, after this point, goes up to his mother's chamber, and he sees some ruffling behind the curtain as he's arguing with his own mother. And he assumes that this ruffling is Claudius, but then he stabs the person behind the curtain. The person behind the curtain was none other than Polonius. Polonius was the father of Ophelia, so the father of Hamlet's lover, and the father of a young man by the name of Laertes. So he kills him by accident, and Polonius was in fact eavesdropping. He shouldn't have really been there. But this is kind of who Polonius is. He's someone that likes to eavesdrop and likes to play naive, but really he kind of knows what's going on everywhere. So he kind of pays for that sin, and Hamlet in fact stabs him to death. Now this actually sparks the outrage of Laertes, which is Polonius' son, and Laertes becomes convinced that he must kill Hamlet. And he becomes convinced of this because of Claudius. Claudius now knows that Hamlet is a threat, that Hamlet knows that Claudius killed the king. And so, what's his name? Yeah, Claudius begins to get suspicious, and he wants to set Laertes to go and kill Hamlet. And at this point, Laertes has a very good reason to do so. Now, poor Ophelia, Hamlet's lover, she already suffered a heartbreak. Hamlet was saying all these mean things to her. But now Hamlet just killed her father. So she actually goes insane. She goes crazy. And then she, in fact, kills herself. She drowns herself. So at this point, Laertes, his sister had died, his father had died, and it was all because of Hamlet. And Claudius convinces Laertes that he must go and kill Hamlet. So they organize a duel, and of course, Laertes, his sword is poisoned, the food and the wine at the duel is poisoned, and so Hamlet duels Laertes. Hamlet wins in that duel, but he gets fatally wounded by Laertes, and it takes some time for that poison to come into effect. Now, as he succumbs to his wounds, he kills Claudius. His own mother, Gertrude, accidentally drinks some of the poison from the wine, so she also dies, and then Hamlet succumbs to his wounds. So what are the themes in Hamlet? I'd like to discuss that in this video. And the first theme that Shakespeare wants us to pay attention to is revenge. Hamlet wants to seek revenge on Claudius for killing his father. Laertes wants to seek revenge on Hamlet for killing his father, Polonius. And there's another character who's on the periphery of the play. He's the king of Norway. His name is Fortinbras. And it's implied that before the events of this play, Hamlet actually kills the king of Norway. So even Fortinbras is seeking revenge. And really, Hamlet, Laertes, Fortinbras, these are all young men who are seeking revenge for the murder of their dead fathers. And so these three characters could be compared and contrasted. Another major theme is the tragic hero, and this is very common with Shakespeare. He has this in Othello, he has a tragic hero in Macbeth. The tragic hero is a hero with many noble characteristics and noble qualities that experiences a fall from grace due to a tragic flaw or a fatal flaw. So in the case of Hamlet, he's a respected, young, strong, confident person, but he's very, very sensitive, very emotional, and he is controlled by this insanity that first he acts insane, but then the reader must really consider, is he actually insane? Which is a real possibility, because it's very strange to even act insane. And he does many things throughout the play which suggest that he actually is, pretty crazy. In the case of Hamlet, and in the case of Shakespeare in general, he likes very nuanced characters. Shakespeare does not like melodrama. He does not like very clear good and very clear evil characters. He likes very realistic characters. He likes characters that have a mix of good and bad in them, because after all, that's what real life is like. Real life is not necessarily black and white. It's always a shade of gray. And so you look at Claudius. He was someone that was a very noble and effective king, but the way that he became king was very evil. You look at someone like Ophelia. She's a very noble, beautiful lady who is very loyal to Hamlet, but she's very sensitive and she's very weak, and she doesn't have a strong kind of self-confidence. You look at Polonius, another noble character, but his fatal flaw, his Achilles heel, is that he likes to eavesdrop. So in the case of Hamlet, there is this fall from grace because he starts off in a well-respected, lofty position, and he ends up not only dying, but the events of the play lead to the death of all of the major characters, except for Horatio and Fortinbras and maybe a couple others. Another major theme is appearance versus reality. So in this play, each character has a public self and has a private self. In the case of Hamlet, he would like to, in private, he's plotting the death of Claudius, but he's not making this public. He's not telling everybody this. He's in fact trying to act crazy, trying to womanize, trying to get drunk in public, trying to do very strange and bizarre things in the name of hiding his true plan. In the case of Polonius, he acts very naive when he's confronted, but in private he's eavesdropping and he kind of knows what's going on with his son and with his daughter and with Hamlet. And with Gertrude also, because he's actually, he gets killed in her chamber. In the case of Claudius, again, in public, very noble. In private, killed the king for power. There's a fair bit of superstition in this play, especially in Act 1, Scene 1, where you have ghosts, you have roosters crowing at Christmas Eve to prevent ghosts from coming, you have all kinds of superstitious things, and This was very common at the Shakespeare's time, but it's also common till today, where you see in this image, people are still afraid of black cats crossing the street or walking under ladders. Okay, you have four-leaf clovers and things like that. There's also no 13th floor on many apartment buildings. So we still believe in many superstitions, but definitely a modern reader, when he or she goes through Shakespeare's Hamlet, will find many, many more of these superstitions. There's also misogyny in this play. So one thing that you may have noticed actually is that there really is no appearance versus reality when it comes to the female characters in the play. Ophelia and Gertrude are depicted to be very simple, very weak, very emotionally driven, and this was the common view of women in those days, which obviously is not true, and many modern readers would definitely see that disparity immediately, that these female characters are not made to be very complex, they're just made to be very simple and fragile and weak and inconfident. So you see Ophelia actually committing suicide, for example, right after her father's death. She can't take the pain. She can't take the pain of Hamlet insulting her. And in the case of Gertrude, she's controlled completely by lust, and she also doesn't really know what's going on. So that's our presentation on Hamlet. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and please subscribe to the Toronto International Academy channel. This is Mr. Bakri signing off.